their different designs, putting the design together what he thinks they want on the playground. He has a presentation before the process. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you. I'll just do a few things this evening. First, I'll talk about the process we use to build playgrounds, because we're going to build a lot on TikTok. And then I'll look at some pictures of playgrounds other communities to build using this process. And then finally, we'll make a tour through playground design for children off the side. So first of all, this is the design day. It's a time when we start with the site to determine how playgrounds are going to fit into the existing site. And then we interview children for a couple hours. We get pages and pages of ideas. We collect all the drawings. We collect various lists that different classes have generated. And then I sit down and I try to bring it all together. Try to bring all these ideas into one playground. And the kids have way more ideas than I can include in a single design. I told them I want to include everything I possibly could, but there's no way I would include everything. We're missing the bungee jumping, the hot tub, and a few things like that. But I did tell them I know that once the playground is built, they'll be able to spend hours at a time on the playground without getting tired of being there. So I'll take this drawing back to the office with me. We'll generate a materials list. I'll send that back to the committee. They'll price everything out and make sure we're within the range of the budget. Then we'll get their feedback on any adjustments that they might like to make to the design. Because this is a starting point. This is what we start talking about, and we can make changes once we get to design development, and that's about a month from now. So we'll gather those changes, then we'll do the final drawings and a new materials list so that it's just that much more refined. And then there's a lot of project management to do. We will have a person in our office who's the project manager at that end. The committee will work directly with the project manager in our office with any questions that they might have. We have a web-based project management software which enables us to exchange a lot of information. We have a lot of phone calls, we have a lot of conference calls, we have a lot of emails back and forth. It takes several months to do all the necessary work in order to get ready for the construction of the playground, because there's fundraising, there's public relations work. We have to recruit a lot of volunteers. I mentioned earlier that this was built by all volunteer help. We have to borrow tools. When I say we, I mean the committee and all of you. We'll help you do it, but in the end, the whole project is something that the community takes a great deal of ownership in. And in a way, while we're always there in the future to help you with maintenance or anything that might come up, we really become transparent at the end. So about a month before, 2 months before your build, one of the people who will be here from our office will come out and have what we call Organization Day. It's a time when we sit down with each committee, we look at the site, and make sure everything's going to fit properly, make sure everything is getting ready for that final build week. And then a couple months later, on a Tuesday, 2 people will arrive from our office. We'll have a meeting with the committee and some special volunteers that we call captains. The captains are local volunteers who will work all the days of the build, all 5 days. And they're very important in our process. We'll touch on them a little bit later. But once we have that meeting, everybody goes, gets a good night's sleep. Wednesday morning, 7 o'clock, the captains and the committee and our consultants will be on site. Between 7 and 8, our consultants will share directions of the tasks that need to be completed that day. At 8 o'clock, volunteers will start signing in through the volunteer sign-in table. And when we think about volunteers, we think about everyone within the community and the surrounding area. And it doesn't matter what your experience is, what your abilities are. If you have even a little interest in helping, we will find a job for you. So at 8 o'clock, volunteers start coming in, sign into the work site. They get formed into crews, directed to one of our consultants. Our consultant will direct that crew based on their experience and skills to one of those volunteer captains. The captain will share instructions. That crew will then embark on those tasks. So we work morning shift from 8 until 12. We take a half hour for lunch. We work 12:30 to 5, take a half hour for dinner, and then work from 5:30 until about 9 o'clock at night. And we do that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday, we want to knock off early because we want to leave time for a great big party. Now, throughout the week, a lot of things have been happening. We've taken tractor-trailer loads of material and turned it into a playground. Once we get to Sunday and have that opening, it's truly a moment you don't want to miss because hundreds of people will have been involved in the process. There'll be the children's workers, and the children will have had a hand in shaping some of the pieces that actually went into the construction of the playground. So as we go through Sunday afternoon, we'll get to the point where one of our consultants will get on the megaphone and say, we're going to pull the plug in 15 minutes. It means you're almost done. And then it gets very quiet. And everybody on the site goes over, starts with a celebratory meal. Almost everyone. A few people from the child care area because the children who've had parents working, the younger children who've had parents working on the site, who have been in child care, done a lot of different things over the last 5 days. And one of the things they will have completed is this gigantic construction paper chain, colorful links, one after another, fastened in place. So while you're having the special celebratory meal, some of the people from child care will be draping this gigantic chain around the playground. They'll keep going and going until they get to the other end. And then all the kids, all the adults who've made this dream come true start migrating over to the front of the playground. Somebody gets up, has a few brief remarks. Now the adults in the audience are thinking things like, I'm exhausted, I wish I was in a hot tub right now, and things like that. But the kids have a single thought, and that is, I want to play. So the adult remarks are brief, and then there's a countdown, 10, 9, on down, 3, 2, 1, snip, the chain falls to the ground. At that moment, the children start rushing out onto the playground for the very first time. And then they start shouting things like, there's my castle, there's my twisty slide, there's my wavy slide, there's my monkey bars, all these things they shared with us on Design Day. And at that moment, you realize you've done more than build a playground. You realize you really have built a dream for your children. And then you look around, and you see all the adults who are standing there. Moments earlier, they were feeling exhausted, but suddenly as the children rush out onto the playground for the first time, there's a wave of exhilaration that just takes over everyone within the area. And at that point, you look at all these adults and you realize you've also built a stronger community. And you look back out and you see the children playing on the playground, you realize you've demonstrated a lesson that you cannot teach in a classroom. You've demonstrated to the children within the community what happens when you dare to pursue a dream. And then you work hard and you cooperate with a lot of people. You realize when you pursue that dream, you do those things, you can do some pretty remarkable things in the end. So what you're embarking on is more than a playground. It really is the dream to your children. So as you think about how to move forward, realize that it's like an old barn raising, but more, because it's not just for a family, it's for the whole generation, it's for the whole community. And it does have an impact that is irreplaceable. So rather than talk about process or the outcomes, I'm going to tell you a story that really captures more than I can describe without a story. We did a project many years ago in Enid, Oklahoma. At the time, it was the largest project we had ever done. It didn't take 5 days, it took 5 weeks to build. It was a half a city block, it was associated with the Children's Museum, and it was absolutely enormous. It was 50 feet high, just huge. And they completed their project, and then everyone went back to their daily routines. And several months later, there was an arson fire at a church. And as soon as that hit the news, all of these individuals who had helped with the playground started calling one another. And they all had the same thing on their mind. They were saying, if we did what we did over at Leonardo's, which is this gigantic science playground, we could help rebuild the church. And that's what they did. They helped get donated materials, they recruited volunteers, they got food to feed the volunteers, they borrowed tools, and they came together and successfully helped prepare a church. And several months later, they called our office and shared that story with us. And after describing the details of the story, they added, and we never would have been able to do that had we not first done the playground. Because doing the playground helped us realize that something like that is possible. And that's what we're starting on today. We've got a dream, we believe it's possible, and we know the steps, and we're sharing those steps with the committee that you need to do in order to complete a successful project. We've been doing this at Weathers & Associates for 40 years, and time after time, we help guide communities to amazing, wonderful play structures for the children, the dreams of the children. So rather than talk about it, let's look at some of the images that people have built recently. And Bonnie, could you push the down arrow when I say next image over on my laptop? We'll get the lights. Okay. So Weathers & Associates, we're always doing custom design, and we're building with volunteers in the community. Next slide. Now this is a tiny project we did. It's actually a rebuild of the original Weathers Playground in Ithaca, New York. Right adjacent to it is Henry St. John's Elementary School that's currently been converted to not-for-profit offices and low-income housing. And it's tiny, but kids have choices at every juncture throughout the structure. Next slide. This is a very large structure. This is in Lubbock, Texas. And what's important about this is not the size. The size can be kind of frightening, actually. What's important about this is everything you see there was placed by someone who has never done this before. Our consultants give little pieces of direction, one step at a time, and we give out little pieces of direction so that if there's a mistake, it's a little mistake, and it's easy to fix. But all of this was done by volunteers, and volunteers who have never done that before. Next slide. We can include little historic areas. There's a village, like a Main Street village on your design. Won't look like this because everything we do is custom, and the details that we use in your little village will be based on local architecture, local businesses, those sorts of ideas. Next slide. This is here in the Midwest, little whimsical farm scene. Next slide. And sometimes on design day, we don't know exactly what to do with an idea, but it seems like an interesting idea. And in this case, a child had asked for a robotic scarecrow. So you can see the scarecrow-like, robotic-like structure, and then to the left, you can see the little scene with the barn that was painted by a local artist, and that's actually the rock wall, so the kids climb up that scene to the left, up into the robotic scarecrow. Next slide. Sometimes we do little ships. This is along the northeast coast. Next slide. Sometimes we do great big ships. This is in Cincinnati, right along the river. Actually, you see those couple big, tall, white columns there. This is actually built under 6 lanes of interstate highway. Next slide. Again, little nautical theme. Next slide. Tree house. I've done a lot of tree houses, but none of the other tree houses look like this, because each tree house we design is going to be a little bit different. Next slide. Castle. The entrance to your playground is a great big castle, but it won't look like this, because again, I've designed many castles, but every time I sit down to design a castle, I'm starting over, starting from scratch. Next slide. Kids, what is this? That's Oklahoma City Zoo. Next slide. We can do manipulatives, little games, little panels. Next slide. Music. Next slide. The last image was chimes that you can build on site. This is actually something that's purchased from a business called SoundPlay. He's located in Georgia. He does wonderful outdoor instruments. Next slide. But no matter what we're doing, where we're building, we're always building based on the imagination and the dreams of children. Next slide. And we're always building with volunteers. Now I asked the kids as we interviewed them this morning, who could help build something like this? They raised their hands and they said moms and dads and stepdads and grandpas and grandmas and aunts and uncles and neighbors and policemen, firemen, contractors, their teachers, their principals, and they raise their hand, they would like to help. There will be an area set aside where children can actually make things smooth and paint things so that they can have a hand in actually building the playground. Next slide. And as a volunteer, you might sign other volunteers in through the volunteer sign-in table. Next slide. Early in the process, we need to have people carry these heavy structural plastic 6x6 posts and set them in the ground. Next slide. Once we get the posts set in the ground, we need volunteers to start framing. Next slide. In addition to the work right on the site, there'll be other areas where some things are being stained or painted. Next slide. And then those things are placed into the structure. Next slide. Here we have some scouts carrying the swing standards into place. Next slide. There's a prefab area where different tasks are completed. This gentleman's sort of routing pickets the old-fashioned way. Nowadays, you can actually order the pickets and send a list of names, and they'll have a computer route those pickets for you. Next slide. This little truck in Cincinnati was built in about 4 parts over in prefab and then carried on to the site. And the people who made the 4 parts may or may not have known what the truck was going to look like. We just give instructions on how to build a piece and then put it together. Next slide. As a volunteer, you might be working to feed the other volunteers. Be a lot of donated food. The task of the food committee is just to make sure the food is on the table so volunteers can get their plates filled, sit down, eat, and get back to work all within a half hour. Next slide. Sometimes local artists will get involved, very often they do. And in this case, the women in the center there, standing up, designed this mosaic wall, and then all of the other individuals are volunteers who are following their design based on the instructions they've gotten from the 2 artists. Next slide. And then we get to Sunday, and we've got something that looks like a playground. Not the kind of playground I grew up on, but the kind of thing that you can really only get through this sort of a process, volunteer build process. You can see that there are a few people down there in the front there draping the chain. A lot of people are over at the celebratory meal at this point in the process. Next slide. Then everyone starts working their way back over to the front of the playground. This is when the adults are thinking about how exhausted they are. And this is when the kids start working their way up to the front of the crowd because they want to play. So there's a few brief remarks. Then there's the countdown, 3, 2, 1, snip, next slide. And the children rush out onto the playground for the very first time. This is a moment you'll never forget, because this is when the children start shouting about, there's my twisty slide, there's my castle, there's my monkey bars, there's my mirror maze, there's my balance on chains, all of these things they dreamed about on design day. It's a moment you'll never stop talking about. This is when you realize you've done more than build a playground. You really have built a stronger community, and you have built the dreams of your children. So as you think about what you can do to move this process forward, don't simply think about what you can do, think about everything you can do to help make those dreams of your children come true. Thank you. Turn the lights back on. We can, next slide, and then I'll go back, turn the lights on. And now, I'd like all the children to stand up right where they are. Okay, and slowly and carefully, walk up to the front here, and sit down on the carpet, right up here. Right here so you can start to see the drawing. And adults, if you want to take a look at the drawing in a little bit, after I do the walkthrough, I'll be up by the drawing to answer any questions you might have. So make a few rows here on the carpet. Give yourself enough room to be a good neighbor. And a few of you might sit in that first row too, kids, because you just want to be able to see the drawing. Why don't you file down this row and you can sit on that bench there in that first row. Yeah, you can sit in that row. Okay. Very, very good. Now this morning, I asked you to imagine your perfect playground. This evening, I want you to imagine that you're in the car and you're driving to the playground with your parents. Your parents come along the street and they pull into the parking spot. You check and make sure there's no cars coming on either side. Coast is clear, so you get out of the car and you dash up the walk into the playground. As you dash up the walk, you see that there's this giant castle right here. So you work your way under the shaky bridge that connects the two sides of the castle, over here and up through the maze, up to the twisty side. So you start going down the twisty side and back up through the maze, down the twisty side, back up through the maze. You do that about 20 times, and then you start to get a little bit tired. So you pause right here, and you watch as your parents walk up the sidewalk, and come over here and sit down on this bench. And your mom opens up a brown paper bag and she takes out 2 cups of coffee. She does one to your dad and keeps one for herself. And your dad takes the newspaper out from under his arm and gives half of it to your mom, keeps half for himself. And your parents sit right here on this bench, reading the newspaper and drinking coffee. So they look up here to see what you're doing, so you duck down. And as you duck down, your face is right in front of this board with a hole in it. And there's a little screen in that hole, and you think, that's really weird. How am I supposed to use that? But rather than worry about that, you dash over here, and you go down the wavy side, you come back up here, up the rock wall, over here, and you go down the middle of the black hole net. You go right down, back down to the ground, and then you can come up here through the rope wall, you can go down the coil, up the net, down the fire pole, and then there's an obstacle circuit right here that has a bouncy bridge, overhead ladder, monkey bars, rings, balance beam on chains. So you do that for a while, and then you start to get a little bit tired. So you pause over here after you come up the net, and you start looking around, and you notice a friend of yours coming to the playground. So as your friend comes up here, she did the same thing that you did when you first got to the playground. She came up here, up through the maze, and down the twisty side. And just like you, she got a little bit tired after a while, and she paused right here. She started looking around, so you ducked down. And she didn't see you, but as you ducked down, your face is right in front of another one of those boards with the hole in it, with the little screen in the hole. And all of a sudden, you realize what it is. Does anybody know what that screen and little hole is? It's not a peepee hole. No, it's not for looking around with one eye. Does anybody know what that is? Not a picture of the park. It's the thing you talk into. There's a hole and a little screen, and then there's a pipe that goes up and then down underground, and it comes up somewhere else on the playground. And you're right over here standing next to one of those holes. Your friend is right over here standing next to one of those holes, so you get an idea. You cup your hands around the hole, and you take a deep breath. And then you say, boom! Your friend jumps so high that she almost hits her head on the castle tower. And at first she doesn't see you, but she can hear you laughing because you made her jump so high. So she dashes over here, across the shaky bridge, and catches up with you over here by the black hole net. So together, one after another, you go down the fire pole, over here you do a few pull-ups, then you come over here and you play on the tire swing until you're really, really dizzy. So you come back over here and you go up the net and you're just hanging out up here, and then you look over here. Who's sitting over there? What are they doing? Right. So you go down the fire pole, you notice there's a low rings and a low ladder here. So you play over here and you go on the spinner until you get really, really, really dizzy again. So this time you come over here and you try to balance on chains, but you're so dizzy you're not doing very well in balance on chains. So you work on the rings, up the rock wall, and you get up here, go over here, go down the twisty slide, back up here, and you're standing in that tower of the castle when you look over here. And who's over there? What are they doing? You're right about mom and dad, but your mom's holding a wrinkled up brown paper bag. And the newspaper's all folded up and tucked under your dad's arm. And then you notice this. And then you hear a voice, familiar voice. It's your mom. And she's saying, "It's time to go. We've been at the playground for 5 hours. So you think really fast. And you go like this and you call back and say, "Okay, but can we take the long way back?" So you see your mom look at your dad, dad look at your mom. You see them both nod, and then you hear another familiar phrase. It's your mom. She's saying, "Okay, but please hurry." So you and your friend go from here, down the twisty side, up through the maze, down the wavy side, out over here, across the rings, up the rock wall, over here, across the shaky bridge, down through the maze, down the rock wall, over here, across the rings, across the balance beam on chains, through the monkey bars, through the steppers, up the net, down the coil, on up through the black hole net, down the fire pole, up the rope wall, down the net, over here, a couple spins on the tire swing, couple spins on the 2-throw swing, 1 spin around on the spinner, back up here across the bouncy bridge, monkey bars, rock wall, on up through the maze, down the twisty side, back over here across the shaky bridge, down the black hole net, and there you are, right there. And you're really, really breathing heavy because you hurried. So you wave to your friend, you go down here, and you're in the car and you're halfway home before you realize that you forgot to say something to your parents. What did you forget to say? Right, thank you for taking me to the playground. And then you remember your friend had a little sister playing over here in the laughing because you made her jump so high. So she dashes over here, across the shaky bridge, and catches up with you over here by the black hole net. So together, one after another, you go down the fire pole, over here you do a few pull-ups, then you come over here and you play on the tire swing until you're really, really dizzy. So you come back over here and you go up the net, and you're just hanging out up here, and then you look over here. Who's sitting over there? What are they doing? Right. So you go down the fire pole, you notice there's a low rings and a low ladder here. So you play over here and you go on the spinner until you get really, really, really dizzy again. So this time you come over here and you try to balance on chains, but you're so dizzy you're not doing very well in balance on chains. So you work on the rings, up the rock wall, and you get up here, go over here, go down the twisty slide, back up here, and you're standing in that tower of the castle when you look over here. And who's over there? What are they doing? You're right about mom and dad, but your mom's holding a wrinkled up brown paper bag. And the newspaper's all folded up and tucked under your dad's arm. And then you notice this. And then you hear a voice, familiar voice. It's your mom. And she's saying, "It's time to go. We've been at the playground for 5 hours. So you think really fast. And you go like this and you call back and say, "Okay, but can we take the long way back?" So you see your mom look at your dad, Dad, look at your mom. You see them both nod, and then you hear another familiar phrase. It's your mom. She's saying, okay, but please hurry. So, you and your friend go from here, down the twisty side, up through the maze, down the wavy side, out over here, across the rings, up the rock wall, over here, across the shaky bridge, down through the maze, down the rock wall, over here, across the rings, across the balance beam on chains, through the monkey bars, through the steppers, up the net, down the coil, on up through the black hole net, down the fire pole, up the rope wall, down the net, over here, a couple spins on the tire swing, couple spins on the two-throw swing, one spin around on the spinner, back up here across the bouncy bridge, monkey bars, rock wall, on through the maze, down the twisty side, back over here across the shaky bridge, down the black hole net, and there you are, right there. And you're really, really breathing heavy because you hurried. So you wave to your friend, you go down here, and you're in the car and you're halfway home before you realize that you forgot to say something to your parents. What did you forget to say? Right, thank you for taking me to the playground. And then you remember your friend had a little sister playing over here in the preschool area, and they've got their own village over here. They've got a train, they've got the combine, they've got a teepee. There's sort of a little historic scene here. They've got their own sandbox and digger, their own swings. And you think to yourself, next time I go over to the playground, I'm going to have to take a look at that area too before I start playing on that school age area. So, how many of you remember, first of all, how many did I talk to this morning? How many of you? Okay, so I gave you a little test at the end of our interviews. 2 questions on the test. And I don't have a test this evening, but I do have 2 questions. And you can just call out the answer to my 2 questions all at the same time. First question. Does that sound like fun? Yeah! I could just barely hear that. Does that sound like fun? Yeah! Excellent. Next question is more important. Do you suppose that we can get moms and dads and aunts and uncles and grandparents and teachers and principals and everybody throughout town and the entire area around it to come out and help with this? Yeah! One more time. Yeah! Very, very good. Let's give these young designers a big hand. And thank you all for coming. There are volunteer sign-up sheets. Make sure that we have your contact information before you leave this evening, because this is an opportunity you don't want to miss. There are refreshments. You can go back and get in line for the clown. And I think there's going to be some magic. And I think Bonnie's going to come up here and give you a couple more details, and maybe, just maybe, she knows something about the playground. You suppose?
This is a very exciting part of our project. Are you ready? Okay, everybody has to listen. This is very special today. We had 4th and 5th graders in the playground. We had them participate in this. I'm not going to do that right now, but I'm going to talk about this community-wide project. It's changed my life. Everybody in here, we need everyone to talk to other people about it. It's an amazing event. I walked up to one in Napoleon and Ryan and FC Defiance, and they are amazing projects, playgrounds. They are from the same company. They're community-wide. That's what makes it special. Everyone needs to be involved, and we'll be so amazed of how this comes together. So I'm glad you all did come out. It's exciting to see this many people, and you need to tell others. So, I'm on a list here, so let's see what we got here. Like Dennis said, we have volunteer sheets. We have bricks to buy. We have picket fencing. There's our $40 a picket, and very reasonable. And they will tell you more information about the bricks. They are amazing to walk up to into the playground, and it makes the sidewalk project. And it's pretty unique, and that's what it's all about, having the community be a part of our playground. And if you are interested in a component, they have plaques that go on the component with your name on it, and that's what it's all about. Community-wide and all about your town. So, this is a very special part. You kids ready? Yes? Okay. I'm going to unveil this board here, and it's going to show the name of the person that named the playground and the name of the playground, and that's pretty exciting. And I hope the person's here. Lauren Starkweather, Imagination Kingdom. That sound me? Are you here, Lauren? Aw, okay. Okay, how did you come up with this name?